What happens when a covert narcissist starts behaving better? Maybe you reached a point where you're finally threatening divorce. Maybe you've even packed a bag and walked out the door. And now they promise to change. Now they promise that they will talk nicer to you. Now they tell you that they love you and that they would do anything for you. Now they quit throwing things. Now they say they are sorry. But yet, it still doesn't feel right. If you've ever been in that situation, you know what I'm talking about, where things just still feel wrong. You might not be able to quite put your finger on it, but things still feel broken or manipulated and definitely threatening. You see, someone who is willing to belittle you, yell at you, manipulate you, lie to, cheat on, blame, and degrade you, okay, you, their partner, their loved one, their safe person. And this is someone who's willing to do that and has done that, in fact, over and over. Well, these problems, this willingness to treat you this way, this goes deeper than just the behaviors themselves. Just stopping the behaviors doesn't fix the underlying problems. So either other more covert behaviors show up because the underlying problems are still there, or it's just a matter of time until the original behavior returns, or both. Welcome back to the Covert Narcissism podcast, where we shine a light on the manipulative dynamics that so often go unseen. Now, I want to begin with a story. She stood at the kitchen sink, staring out the window, coffee going cold in her hand. For months, maybe even years, she had begged for this change, for peace, for him to stop drinking, to stop yelling, to stop disappearing emotionally every time life got hard. And now he had. He had changed. He was sober. The outburst had stopped. The late night circular conversations, for the time being at least, had ceased. The gaslighting, the cold shoulders, the emotional landmines, all noticeably less. To anyone on the outside looking in, they would think, finally, you should be so happy. He's better now. But as she stands there, staring at the empty backyard, a different reality is settling into her chest. It still doesn't feel safe. It still doesn't feel real. And still, she feels very alone. You see, the behavior had changed, but the energy had not. Something underneath was still broken. And that's what we're talking about today. The covert narcissist who stops the visible harm is like the dry drunk who stops drinking, but never heals the hidden wounds. Behavior change is not the same thing as real healing. And we're going to talk about how to trust your gut when something still feels off. Today, we're exploring this powerful parallel, the dry drunk and the covert narcissist who seems to have changed. You see, if someone stops drinking or someone stops yelling, blaming, and stonewalling, you might think that the problem is over. But what happens when the behavior is gone and the dysfunction still lingers? What happens when someone cleans up the symptoms but never treats the wounds? Let's dive into this. So, what is a dry drunk? Let's start by breaking this down. At first glance, it sounds simple. Someone who is sober but still acting like they do when they are drinking. But it goes deeper than this. A dry drunk is someone who has stopped drinking, maybe for weeks, months, even years, but they've not done the emotional or psychological work underneath. They have not faced the reasons that they turned to drinking in the first place, the reasons that they sought to numb out. They haven't faced their, past trauma. They haven't unpacked the shame that they're living in. They haven't learned emotional regulation. They haven't dealt with their loneliness and grief or the belief systems they built about themselves and the world around them. They haven't healed the wounds that pushed them to numb out with alcohol to begin with. All of that is still sitting there, untouched and unresolved. And so instead, it's like they're white knuckling their way through life. I'm sober, gosh darn it, and I'm going to stay that way. But they're still emotionally volatile, disconnected, resentful. They still carry the same anger, irritability, fear, emotional disconnection, and volatility. They may lash out in the same ways, or it may be a little bit different. It may be more of a simmering anger, a heaviness, a wall between them and everyone else. So they might not lash out in the same ways. It just changes. They might not reach for the bottle anymore, but they haven't reached for help either. And that unhealed pain still leaks out through sarcasm, control, emotional, reactions, bitterness. Here's the part that often gets missed. Addiction was never the core problem. It's a coping strategy. It's a survival skill. The alcohol was their painkiller, but it doesn't, you stopping the alcohol doesn't touch why the pain was there in the first place. Alcohol was their, emotional escape hatch. But now that the alcohol is gone, the pain remains. So while they might technically be sober, they're still stuck in survival mode. They're still operating from fear, control, avoidance, and shame. Unless they're actively working to heal those internal wounds, learning, emotional regulation, facing their trauma, building healthy connections, or learning how to be vulnerable and build healthy connections, unless they do these things, they're going to stay trapped in that dry drunk state. Just sober, but still unwell, still unsafe to be in close relationships, still operating from the same emotional blueprint that drove them to drinking in the first place. And as we're going to explore today, that same dynamic often plays out with the covert narcissist who stops the visible behaviors, but never faces their own internal wounds. This is exactly the space where so many of my clients land when they're dealing with a covert narcissist who seems to have changed. They say, okay, but they've stopped, but why does it feel worse? I hear this all the time. Things like, he's finally stopped lying, stopped gaslighting me, stopped raging at me. I should feel relieved. I should feel happy, but I don't. I almost feel worse. Or they might say, well, she's not manipulating me anymore, not playing those mind games, but now it feels like I'm living with a stranger who resents me for even breathing. Another client recently said to me, it's like the chaos is gone, but now the air is so thick with tension and coldness. There's no yelling, but there's certainly no warmth either. And this is where the confusion sets in, because logically, the bad behavior stopped. The lying, the emotional cheating, the gaslighting, the manipulation, the explosive reactions, those are all gone or at least have slowed way down. So on paper, this looks like progress, and the people around you might even say, hey, at least they're trying, or you should be grateful they've changed. I'm so happy for you. But inside, you're left with this gnawing, unsettled feeling that you can't explain. You can't put it into words. And now you start questioning yourself. Okay, I'm not giving them the benefit of the doubt or the space to heal. Maybe I'm the problem. Why can't I just enjoy the peace? Why does this new version of the relationship still feel so lonely, cold, empty? Maybe I am the problem here. Well, here's why it still feels that way. Because behavior change without emotional change, without accountability, without real healing, does not create safety. What you are missing is the emotional safety. What you're feeling is this emotional void instead. And that void has always been there, but it used to be hidden underneath the chaos of their abusive behavior. But when the yelling stops, this silence, this emotional silence, becomes deafening. When the manipulation stops, the emptiness becomes more real. When the lies stop, the emotional disconnection becomes undeniable. And in many cases, this can actually feel worse. Because before, at least you could point to the obvious dysfunction. You could point to the yelling and the raging and the reactions. But now you're left questioning your own reality all over again, but in a different way. Now you're stuck in this space where the outside world thinks that things have improved, but your body knows differently. Okay, your heart, your head, your system knows I'm still not safe here. This is where the comparison to the dry drunk and a covert narcissist becomes crystal clear. Because, like the dry drunk who gives up alcohol but keeps the dysfunction, the covert narcissist gives up the obviously abusive behaviors, but keeps the emotional dysfunction. They've removed the symptom but not treated the wound. And so what happens? They perform the appearance of change. Covert narcissists are extremely performative. They manage their behavior. They stop doing the things that got them in trouble before. But underneath, the shame is still there. The emotional immaturity is still there. The fear of vulnerability is still there. The lack of empathy, that's a big one, is still there. The deep need for control and image management is still there. And it shows. But now you really only see it in your tight, intimate relationship. Now it really doesn't show to the world. It just got more closer to home. It shows in this emotional disconnection, coldness, resentment, the lack of accountability, the ongoing inability to build real trust, safety, intimacy. So technically, they are doing better. But in reality, they're just hiding the dysfunction in new, quieter ways. You see, both addiction and narcissistic behaviors, they're responses, they're coping strategies for survival. But what we need to look at is what really lies underneath them. These are things like unresolved trauma, whether it's childhood abuse, neglect, abandonment, betrayal. Trauma changes how someone relates to themselves and the world around them. It shapes their core beliefs. Those beliefs are, I'm not safe. I can't trust anyone, even my intimate partner. I'm not good enough for them. These are some of the things that come from unresolved trauma. How about emotional dysregulation? Many people who struggle with addiction or narcissism never learned how to feel their emotions safely. And so anger explodes, sadness gets buried, fear gets masked with control. They are not safe to feel their own feelings, so they don't know how to give you the space to safely feel your feelings. How about chronic shame and low self-worth? They often carry a painful inner narrative. If people really knew me, they would leave. And so they build a mask. That mask is confidence, perfection, control. And when that mask is threatened, then they lash out or they withdraw. Identity confusion and lack of meaning. They don't know who they are beyond their roles, achievements, and image. So they cling to, this image. They cling to their roles. They cling to their achievements. And this is the pain that lies underneath. Another thing that lies underneath is their unmet attachment needs. They're hungry for connection, like all of us are, but they're terrified of vulnerability. That fear of vulnerability, it causes them to push people away and then blame them for leaving. So true intimacy terrifies them and they stay in this self-protection mode. Again, this is one of the issues underneath the addiction or the narcissism that is not getting dealt with. When all of this remains unhealed in them, it doesn't matter if they stop yelling or stop drinking. The same emotional energy is still there and it still leaks out. It just looks different. It wears a different mask. Now, I want you to imagine somebody who's carrying all of those wounds that we just talked about, and they simply just stop drinking, or they stop the narcissistic behaviors. They stop yelling, lying, cheating, gaslighting. They stop being cruel. The behavior stops, but the internal chaos remains. Now, what does this look like? Well, they are easily overwhelmed. They're reactive to stress. That doesn't go away. They avoid real emotional intimacy. Again, there's that fear of vulnerability. It's still there. They project their unhealed wounds onto their partner or their kids. They stay stuck in this blame game and shame game and denial and performative behavior. They expect others to manage their emotions because they certainly can't do it themselves. And they expect others to validate their worth, again, because they can't do it for themselves. It's like trying to remodel a house without touching the foundation. Over time, this breaks down. So what is the impact of these unaddressed wounds? The impact on the partner. You feel confused. Cognitive dissonance at this point grows extremely. You feel alone, like no one else gets it, and you certainly don't feel seen by your partner. And then you feel guilty for not feeling seen or for not feeling safe, for not being able to trust. And so the guilt level definitely increases. You feel obligated to try to, show up on your side of the street. If they're showing up on their side, or it looks like they are, then you feel like you need to show up and you go back into that heavy work mode or fix it mode. You question your instincts because, nothing's wrong now, right? But your nervous system keeps telling you something's wrong. You still don't feel safe here. What's the impact on the family? Children still grow up walking on eggshells. Even if no one's yelling at them now, the tension is still there. So that tension still causes avoidance. It causes emotional shutdown. It does not allow for relationship repair. The kids internalize that love means emotional labor or it means emotional withdrawal, that's what love looks like in this environment. So it still has a massive impact on the kids. What about on the person themselves? What about on the covert narcissist? Without healing, they remain stuck in survival mode. They will continue to live with this chronic dissatisfaction, this chronic shame, this chronic, blaming everything on the world around them. And they're either going to implode with shame or explode with blame. And we're going to talk about that in a future episode. This is the risk then of relapse, whether to alcohol or to the narcissistic behaviors. That risk of relapse is always close by, which is why you feel like you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop because it always comes back. If you don't heal the underlying wounds, the narcissistic behavior is going to come back. So let's be really clear here. Real healing does not mean being perfect. It means being honest. It means facing the pain and doing the work. Real healing sounds like, hey, I was wrong, and I want to understand the impact that I had on you, and I want to figure out why I behaved this way. It sounds like I see where my patterns come from, maybe looking back at their own childhood wounds or their own childhood traumas, and I'm actively working to change them. It sounds like I'm not just avoiding harm, I'm learning how to build safety. Real healing isn't just not yelling, it's learning how to stay connected in conflict. It's building emotional maturity and it's becoming someone others can trust, not just someone who behaves better. There is a big difference here. So whether you're navigating life with someone in recovery or someone who's changed their behavior but never opened their heart, you're not crazy for still feeling uneasy. Your body knows the difference between peace and suppressed chaos, between growth and white knuckling our way through with this gripping control of our behavior until it becomes performative. Sobriety is not the same thing as healing. Silence is not the same thing as safety. Restraint and performative behaviors are not the same thing as accountability. If you're stuck in this in between, they're not doing the bad stuff anymore, but I still don't feel okay. I want you to know this, that dissonance is real. You deserve more than the absence of harm. You deserve presence, growth, repair, connection. If you're ready to move forward, I invite you to check out my coaching services or join one of my support groups. You can find all the information at covertnarcissism.com. And if this episode resonates with you, please subscribe to the podcast to get more episodes just like this. Leave a review, leave a rating. All of that helps to spread the word to our world. Because healing isn't just about pretending that things are fine. It's about telling the truth, even when it's complicated, even when it's painful. I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. The information provided by Renee Swanson, Covert Narcissism Podcast, and CNG Life Coaching is for educational purposes only and is not to be used for diagnosis purposes. It is not intended to be a substitute for clinical care. Please consult a health care provider for guidance specific to your case. This material discusses narcissism in general. Renee shares stories from her personal experience as well as from those she has talked with for several years. Her material does not claim that any specific person has narcissism and should not be used to refer to any specific person as having narcissism. Permission is not granted to link to or repost this material to support any allegation or claim that any specific person is a narcissist. That would be an unauthorized misuse of the material and information provided.